Welcome back to Project Command. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Johnny Torgeson. Dr. Torgeson is an operations chief, leadership consultant, author, and national speaker. He leads Firedog Consulting, where he focuses on building stronger leaders inside high-risk, high-consequence organizations. His work centers on forging teams, building cultures, and developing impact-driven leaders. With decades of experience in the fire service and advanced academic credentials in strategic leadership, he operates at the intersection of street-level credibility and executive-level thinking. He understands what it takes to lead from the front, but also how to build systems that scale across an organization. Johnny, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Peter. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, I got a ton of stuff that I want to talk to you about. You have an extremely impressive portfolio here. But before we get into all that, could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, like we were talking about before, this is certainly the worst part for firefighters.
It's always the toughest.
So I'll make this part brief. I spent 4 years in the Army and became a E5 there, and enjoyed the aspect of leadership. Didn't know how much I enjoyed it, actually. In fact, like the mid 2000s, I tried to get back in the Army, re-enlist as an officer. We had the recruiter come over to our house, and my wife was like, "Yeah, well, you get deployed, and you're expecting the recruiter to lie or at least like fudge a little." And he's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, he's getting deployed." But like that was the end of it. So there goes my military career, or at least an extended version of it, right? Been in the fire service for 26 years, and currently an operations chief at MCLB Barstow Fire and Emergency Services. It's a Department of Defense, or now Department of War, base in Southern California.
Nice. And so how did you get from Army, you're thinking about going back into the fire service? How did that transition happen?
I was actually in the fire service per se, just as military version while I was in the Army. So I was a firefighter.
What's that like? I've always wondered, because I've known some military firefighters. What's it like on the military side?
It's very singular because of the experiences. It's luck of the draw on where you get stationed. I had just so many friends that were in the fire service, in the Army or Air Force or Marine Corps, and they just didn't get to do their job. It was kind of a terrible experience. They got, a lot of times they don't know where to put them, so they'll like put them in the mailroom to get sent overseas. You got all these credentials and certifications because they do spend a lot of money on you, training you. And but I was one of the fortunate ones where I was originally attached to a deployable unit in Fort Drum, New York. And while we weren't deployed, I was chosen to work with the civilians, just running operations, so you're running calls and whipping 911 and doing all the fun stuff. And then eventually got deployed. And then when I came back from that, I was PCS'd. And PCS just means like moved from one station to another, or one base from another, and went to Fort Wainwright, Alaska. And I did the same thing. It was like a hybrid organization. It was half military, half civilian, and was able to just be a firefighter and do my job and do a lot of training and a lot of cool things. And so it was an amazing experience for me. I didn't know how much I loved the military and loved being in the Army till I left it. I was so focused on becoming a civilian firefighter because it was just kind of the means to the end, that I got out with that singular focus. And when I got out, I was like, oh man, like I miss it. Like it was fun. So
that's life, right?
Yeah. Sure.
So what's the, tell us a little bit about the place you work now.
Yeah. So it's Barstow is like the last stop, the last like kind of like quote unquote big town in Southern California on your way to Vegas. So it's open desert. We cover a little over 200 square miles of not square miles, but 200 miles of freeway in all directions. And so we have some pretty long response times on obviously certain calls. it could be upwards to, 45 minutes to 60 minutes just to get to the person that's crashed on the freeway.
Wow.
So we do land a lot of airships. We see a lot of trauma. We see a lot of death, get a lot of fires, semi truck fires.
Hmm.
Semi trucks are always catching on fire. In case people don't know that, it's crazy. Um, and then we provide mutual aid for 6 different local agencies in the area, and we're automatic aid to all of those.
Hmm.
We're under mutual aid contracts, but it's auto aid. As soon as the call goes out, we're going out with it. And so, it's a fun department. It's an innovative department. I consider it one of the best, if not the best, uh, uh, fire departments in DoD, and there's over 700 installations. Um, I enjoy our management team that I work with. We got some great leaders that we promoted. We're in a transition period right now. I think, like a lot of different organizations, of just new leaders and wanting people to step up to be leaders, and all the things that come with that. But the
Yep.
department itself, it's fun.
So when you're a firefighter in DoD, could you be transferred to a completely different fire department, like within under the DoD umbrella?
I mean, you can, in the sense of what they call a RIF, like reduction in force. Um, but no, not that's not a RIF isn't typical. So, but it is kind of one big department in a sense, meaning I don't have to start over on time and
Hmm.
time and grade and all this stuff. Uh, I can just apply to another department within DoD,
I
and
see.
everything
Okay.
goes with me,
Hmm. Yeah, very interesting.
retirement, all that stuff. And so, yeah, if you want to work around the world, like say you want to work in Greece, Pseudo Bay or something like that, or you want to work in Italy, like you can do any of that. You want to work in Hawaii, unlike the municipal departments, you're tied to that retirement system. You're kind of tied
Yep.
down to that department, and once you lock in, you're there pretty much, unless you want to start over or you're retiring.
I've always, whenever I explain that to people that aren't firefighters, that always blows their mind that you have to start over. You could be very high up in an organization, but you go to another fire department and you could very likely have to just like start from scratch. That's a totally alien concept to people that aren't in the fire service.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of alien concepts. We're such a unique
Hmm.
animal that people really don't understand how it works. And for us, it's we're in it, right? And
Yep.
so it's normal, but for the layman, it's out of this world.
So how long have you been with that department that you're with now?
I started in 2004, and then
Wow.
I actually left for a little bit.
Okay.
I wanted to open a business, and so I had a meeting with the chief. I was like, "Hey, I love this department. I want to come back. Is there any way you would hire me back?" And he said, "Yeah." And so I went contract and I went overseas. I worked in Uzbekistan and made some good money. And then the chief held to his word and hired me back, and been there since. So came back in the end of 2005 and been there since. And so total, it's about 21 years.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. And from what I understand, I did an interview a couple weeks ago with Samson DeSessa, who's a author. He's also a fire chief at a military installation, and he was saying that it's not very common actually to have someone that stays at that, who's in a sort of like a command level position that stays in those organizations for that tenure of time. There's a lot of hopping around because that's a quick way to kind of move up in the leadership ranks. But it sounds like you've been kind of just at one department for 21 years more or less.
Yeah, I think some of that has to do with timing, right? Because depending on when people retire, sometimes people just like they got to get dragged out of
Right.
positions, and so I think there's some luck involved with the timing, and then the other aspect, and what I tell my guys is called I call it throwing yourself open, and that is, like in football, the analogy is you want to be at the spot at a specific time and the ball is meeting you there, as opposed to waiting for someone to get to that spot and then you throw it. Because
Hmm.
if you wait, by the time you throw the ball's behind you, right? And so uh, applying that to careers, it's you are always preparing for that next level of life, and making sure that when those opportunities are there, that you're certified, you're ready, and it's just a matter of an opportunity versus you. Oh, the opportunities here. Now let me get ready for this, or now let me get certified and do all the things.
The cross section of preparation and opportunity. Yep, I like that.
Exactly. That's a You said it way better than I just did. I take the long way around things.
I tend to be a little bit long-winded myself, so I understand that. Well, so one of the things that I really appreciated, you and I had a great conversation, I guess it was last week, and we talked about kind of what has shaped your view of leadership. And I found it to be such a unique perspective. And something that you said that I really appreciated was, everybody in the fire service thinks they're a leadership expert. Everybody's got a twist on leadership. But I think that yours was really grounded in like that balance of technical proficiency with, enough, academic leadership concept that it was, a holistic approach. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your kind of philosophy on leadership?
Yeah, my philosophy is pretty much a rejection of the contemporary or orthodoxy in leadership
Hmm.
today. Uh, and this is kind of like I would say, a ball of yarn, right? Once you pull the string on this turns into like a huge, deep conversation. So
Let's go.
I'll,
Let's do it.
I'll,
Let's
I'll
go
hit some
there.
wave tops. But uh, how I view leadership is a few things. One is leadership is really grounded in the operational level, and it's been hijacked to be taken into the executive level, where we just call everything leadership these days. It turns into this ubiquitous term, and it's not. It's truly been hijacked. Um, the other thing is too is when it comes to leadership, you'll hear things such as like, "Oh, people. The whole point of leadership is to make more leaders." And it's a half truth. It's not actually it. And there's very famous people and well respected people who actually tout that, and really it's come from them. Like people such as John Maxwell came from one of his books, and now everyone says it.
Hmm.
But once you start experiencing uh, just leadership as a whole, just kind of the practice of it, and really reflecting on it, you see that a lot of the stuff that people say just is it's entirely just not accurate if there's reflection. And so how I my general philosophy of leadership is twofold, and that is one, I believe the what you're trying to achieve on the individual basis as a leader is helping people transcend their modus operandi,
Hmm.
their behaviors, right? And that is, we all have a default setting in life, and typically that default setting is path of least resistance. It is avoiding conflict. It is complacency. And so the job of the leader, right, is to influence someone in such a positive way that they transcend their normal behaviors. They go above and beyond something they would do, but they're doing it based on two things: their want to do it, their internal drive, and that relationship you're building with them, which is the influence part of it. And then the other aspect of it is, so that's on an individual basis. Um, the other aspect that I believe is the entire goal of leadership in organizations is to build teams.
Hmm.
And the reason why I say that, it's uh, everyone agrees that leadership is relationally based. That's one thing we could all agree on, is leadership at the end of the day is a specific brand of relationship, a professional relationship for the most part when we're talking about organizations.
Hmm.
Um, and so team building is the only thing that you really need relationships for. If you were to truly break down all of the other stuff we're trying to accomplish in an organization, you don't really need relationships for it.
Hmm.
Like, we're on the fire ground. I don't need a relationship with someone to be effective on the fire ground. I need someone to know their job. I need someone to be able to communicate. But none of that requires the type of relationships or leadership that you need in a firehouse.
Hmm. What's the
Uh,
difference?
uh, what do you mean?
So, like, there's a specific type of leadership that, well, not maybe not leadership, but management on a fire ground, and then there's the leadership in the firehouse. And I think, one of the things I've heard before is that we a lot of times will take sort of tactical level leadership and we'll try to apply it at the firehouse. And I just wonder what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and that is, you can't. Uh, there's very, very, very little leadership that happens um, on the fire ground.
Hmm.
Now, mind you, I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? And that is, hey, you get into a sticky situation, and your team, because you've built such a great relationship and a great team, that when you get into a sticky situation, your team trusts you and follows you. There's that, right? But that's the exception on
Mm-hmm.
the fire ground. That's not the rule. Typically, it's here's a strategy that we need to, an overall strategy that we need to accomplish to mitigate this incident. Here are the objectives in order to meet that strategy. Here's the tasks that we need to accomplish to meet the objectives. That's all management. And
Yep.
that's all like, hey, it's resource management. Hey, do I have enough people? Do I have enough technically skilled people in these specific areas in order to accomplish these things? And then it's a matter of just carrying those things out.
Hmm.
That's not leadership by any stretch of the imagination. Um, and so that's why, just to add to what you're saying, like it is different. It's completely different. We can call that leadership because we're in a leader role, but genuinely, it's really management,
Hmm.
and that's why we don't call them incident leaders. We call them incident commanders, right?
Exactly.
Um, when our largest fires in California, we call them incident management teams. We don't call them incident leadership teams. And so, even in our own verbiage, we pay homage to the fact that these are administrative, supervisual, um, command and management style skills and tasks that we need to accomplish. But yet, we convolute it with leadership. And so, when you take that into the firehouse, it's the same exact thing.
Hmm.
And that is, the further you go up in an organization, the less leading you're doing. And it's a different brand of leadership. Operational leadership and executive leadership, quote unquote leadership, are not the same. But in firehouses, in courses, in conferences, it gets treated like it's the exact same thing. And that's why I say, like, I preach something completely different
Hmm.
than the contemporary leadership guru out there.
Well, why don't we unpack that a little bit? Tell us, so we've kind of talked about maybe a little bit of the difference between leadership and management, but why don't you expand on that a little bit? What is, what do you see as executive level leadership, and what do you see as more kind of, I don't want to call it middle management because that has sort of a negative connotation, but middle management versus executive leadership or executive management?
Yeah. Um, so a couple things. One, and this is something I explain in the book because uh, it's there needs to be an understanding of the types of influence in order to even answer that question. I'm sure you've heard, Peter, that leadership is influence, right? Like you've
I'm
heard
sorry, say
that
that again.
leadership is influence.
Mm-hmm.
You've
Yep.
heard that, yeah. And so, and it's correct. But the problem is that not all influence is the same. So you can't
Hmm.
just say blanketly like, "Oh, leadership is influence," because we know that there's different types of influence. Like there's coercive influence, right, or coercive power, right? Um, there's sexual influence, right? We're like, hey, you're attracted to someone, and guess what? That makes you want to do things because you're influenced by it, right? Like marketing uses that on commercials all the time. There's a reason why the suntan lotion commercial has a girl in a bikini,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not to get crude, but I'm just making a distinction here that
Yep.
influence is very specific. And so when we say leadership is influence, well, it's a specific type of influence, and what I call leadership influence. And what I found out is there's really three core aspects to leadership influence. and that is one, your self-influence, and that's how you talk to yourself, what you think about yourself, your character, your traits, all the things that encompass you as a person that influence your own behavior. Meaning, it doesn't influence anybody else, just influences you as a person. And it's why I'm writing a book on self-leadership, and that is for you to be effective in all the other two aspects of leadership. Well, you first have to be able to lead yourself in a very real way with values and ethics and character and traits. And people tackle that, right? They tackle that through values-based leadership and stuff like that. But I say you can't tackle that outside of yourself. And this is where I go against the grain, where people try and bring values to conferences like, oh, you need to have this value, you need to have this value, and get other people to have these values. And let's do brainstorming and mind mapping and get people to agree on values. So then we're all doing values together. Humans don't work like that. You can go take any conference you want. You can hang all the values on the wall that you want. People are not going to just change their values because it's on a wall or because they took a course. It's embedded, it's core, it's deep. And people don't just change core things, core values, unless something impactful or life-changing happens. That's when people change values. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, they'll change attitudes. They might change behaviors, but they certainly aren't changing values. Who can change values is yourself. And so that's why I say it's the core person, right? Like, so you change your own values. And so that's the first part of this, right? Of leadership influence is influencing yourself. And the next part, and this is really the core of leadership and why it's at the operational level. And it's what I call proximal influence. And I had to learn this lesson actually the hard way. And what I mean by proximal influence is it's the people that you are interacting and you are able to influence with physical presence on a routine basis. So, for example, in the firehouse, and why we say captains are the backbone, or lieutenants, whatever your rank structure is, are the backbone of the fire service, is because they have proximal influence. They have the ear. They're able to model, so they can see, touch, all the senses of what that leader is doing on a daily basis. That's proximal influence. And that's a specific type of leadership influence, right? And so those captains here's an example, captains that hang out in the room all day or don't try and build relationships. Well, the most influential type of leadership influence you can, they're abdicating it. They're just like, and so they don't build good leadership influence.
Johnny, can I ask you, why do you think proximal influence is so important? Why is it the most important?
Let's look at our kids. When you're raising your children, how old are your kids, Peter?
4 and 7.
4 and 7. Okay, perfect. Right now, because of proximal influence, they listen to everything you say. They're copying everything you say. They are learning how to be great individuals right now. And it's because of the type of influence you have. But what happens, and we've all seen it and heard it, and you're going to go through it. I have teenagers, and I've had teenagers. Now they're adults. What happens when they're playing sports? They're going to dances. They have a job. They're in clubs. They're doing all sorts of things, and they're hanging out with their friends. How much influence do you have on that teenager's life now?
Much less.
That's proximal influence. You see it every day, just even in families. And so that shows you the importance of proximal influence, is even in your own family where you're around them, at nighttime and stuff like that. Maybe even on weekends and stuff like that. That leads us to the next thing. And that is that next piece that, once again, this is something I developed myself. This is where my book and how I look at things and what I've done is more pioneering versus just regurgitating what everyone else says. And that is the last outer ring. I like to call it distinctive influence. And that's that executive realm. I don't get to hang out with firefighters. And in fact, it would be inappropriate for me, like just hanging out with firefighters all day. That would just be weird, right? Like that's what captains are there for. Um, Distinctive influence is based off of how you carry yourself, those micro interactions that you have every day, your reputation, your characteristics. It's very very little based off of your relationship with that person. So here's an example: like people listen to Jocko Willink, right? He's one of the authors of Extreme Ownership. He has a podcast, much like yourself. People, he doesn't know all these people, but is he able to influence them, meaning help them transcend their behavior in a positive direction? Absolutely. And he's done that really well. That's where we're at with the executive level. That's the type of influence that now you can have some proximal influence. Hey, go. They call it walk around management. Like, hey, go to a station and have dinner with the guys or breakfast or stuff like that. Like, show up to some training. That's a little bit of proximal influence that you can get there, but that's not the world you live in. The world you live in is distinctive influence, meaning what is distinctive about you and your characteristic and what you offer people from a hand's distance away versus the proximal influence where you get to see them do that stuff on a daily, hourly basis.
Johnny, I really love that framework. And this is one of the reasons I was so excited to do this interview. When we talked about this last week and you were kind of explaining some of the different philosophies that you've developed, I mean, just like you said, these are very different from the kinds of things that I've heard elsewhere. I don't think I've ever heard anybody explain the difference between proximal influence and distinct influence. And once you say it out loud, it's like, oh, well, yeah, that actually obviously makes complete sense. But I just hadn't thought about it like that. So I think I think that's exactly right on. Maybe you can help me with this. So moving from proximal influence, which I think your example is great with, when you're spending more time with your kids, obviously you have more influence on them. And so if you're a leader in an organization and you're moving from proximal influence to that distinct influence, what do you need to know to make that transition, that move from direct supervision to, supervision by proxy, I guess we could call it.
It's honestly, I have felt that, and that's such a profound question, Peter, because I think it's rhetorical in the sense of I think it was more difficult to transition from driver to captain than from uh, operations to executive. I think that operations to executive transition is incredibly more difficult
Hmm.
because it's a completely different world. You're still lying in operations when you move up to captain or even battalion chief. Um, but when you get into the executive part, division chief, deputy chief, fire chief, just all those type of ranks, and you're pretty much removed from most of operations. Uh, it is a completely different world, and uh, the most difficult part, and the part that I'm still working on too, Peter. All this stuff, not all of it, but many of the things that we're going to talk about, further today. I'm still developing as a leader. I don't have all the answers. I don't have it all figured out. I just share, right?
Hmm.
And what I found the most difficult, to answer your question more specifically, is leading leaders of leaders. Like that's where you're at in the organizational chart is you're trying to influence people to influence people to influence people to eventually influence firefighters. Like that's how many layers. And so fire chiefs, division chiefs, assistant chiefs, they want to impact firefighters. So, what winds up happening is this trapping where they think they're going to lead firefighters. They're just trying to skip all the steps, skip all the ranks because it's easier, and try and lead them themselves. And and here's the thing: is that's why I'm so, I guess, passionate about. One of the things I'm so passionate about is building teams. Is not only do I think it's the goal, I also think it's the answer to your question. And that is, hey, how do you transition to that? Well, you do the same thing that you should have always been doing. You build a team. And so as a captain, I had to build a team. It's like, okay, well, how do you build a team? Because just because you say you're on a team doesn't mean you're actually on a team. And then, moving up to the next rank and you're in charge of a captain, it's like, okay, well, how do I build a leadership team? Like, what does that look like? And then how do I build a management team? And then how do I build a command team, which is where I'm at now? Um, when you build those teams, you can influence those people enough and build good relationships and develop those people so where they have the tools and the ability and the skills to do the same thing and replicate the process all the way down. But just like the telephone game is the further it gets from you, the more watered down it gets.
Yeah.
And that's why it's hard. And that's why it's this indefinite process because you're screwing up all the time, right? Well, just think of all the screw ups along the way till it finally reaches the firefighter. And so that's why, at least how I tackle it, it's developing systems, it's developing teams, it's developing individuals, and then the hardest part, following up on each one of those things. Yep. And so that is so much time, it's so much effort, and you can easily take one step forward, two steps backwards because in any one of those areas because you're fallible, right? You're gonna mess up, and then that sets you back even more time. And then there's cascading effects to that because you're so high up in the level. And so us being on top of our game and trying to reduce the number of times that we mess up is really the key because, man, I'll tell you, like, it takes a lot at our level. It takes a lot of attaboys to make up for one. Oh boy.
Yep. Yeah. Well said. Well, man, Johnny, there's so many things that I want to kind of, dig deeper on, but you said something that I want to kind of drill down on a little bit, which is you talked about building systems. And I just wonder, I guess I should preface this with, I am pretty convinced that systems are absolutely critical for any fire service, or I mean, really any organization, but particularly for the fire service. I think, when you have a superstar employee, it's easy to see like, okay, when my 20-year driver checks the truck out, we're always ready to go to a fire. But how about when my 2-year driver checks the truck out? And I think the value of systems is that it creates repeatable outcomes. Like a system, like a driver checklist means that truck is going to be just as ready to go to the fire when I have my 20-year guy check it and as it is when I have my 2-year guy check it. And so systems can be as simple as a checklist, or they can be as complex as, a very built out succession plan or whatever. So I just wonder, what do you think about developing systems and what role does that have when it comes to building a team?
Yeah. So there's a couple. So how systems are typically viewed. And once again, this is where I've kind of broken from the pack. How systems are typically viewed is a management function, and that's how it should be viewed, right? Because when it comes to management, it's all about things, right? It's about resources, it's about stuff, and it's about meeting the mission. Leadership, on the other hand, is purely relational and people, right? And so but what I found out is there is this intersection that, at least in my experience, where I was able to fuse those things. And that is instead of building systems that are output based, based on performance, right? Based on things that need to get accomplished, the management side of things. What I stumbled across is building systems that were relational based. And here's what I mean by that is we're all told that we need to manage our relationships. Here's an example. The relationship you have with your wife is completely different than the relationship you have with your boss. Mm-hmm. The relationship you have with your boss is completely different than the relationship you have with your 4-year-old, which is also completely different than the relationship you have with your best friend. And each one of those relationships you manage accordingly. You do certain actions with those things. For example, with your wife, you probably make sure you take out the trash every day, right? Like with your boss, you make sure that following up on things that he gave, taskers that you gave you, making sure that you are taking care of your guys, just how you manage that relationship. There's certain activities that you're doing on a constant basis. That's my point there. And then when you tie that together with basically how people are influenced by our actions, it creates a symbiotic relationship. And so here's an example. Even the people that are in the firehouse that are rude or a-holes 24/7, if they're an a-hole 24/7, they still have respect from, it's crazy, a large amount of people. And the reason being is, like, you would think like, oh man, he's an a-hole. Why do people like him? Why are people hanging around him? Because they know what to expect from him. That person, he or she, is just consistent. And you know what people eventually say? Oh, that's just Tony.
Yeah,
he's right. An a-hole, but he's a great firefighter. He's this, he's that. You know what I'm saying? And so it shows you the power of consistency. The power of consistency, because people don't like not knowing what to expect. The 100%. People that aren't liked well in the fire service or any organization, I think you can agree with this, are the people that are up and down. You're like, I don't know what to expect from firefighter Snuffy today. He could be a great guy, or he could be a complete, like, whatever.
Yep. This is exactly correct, by the way. I'll take consistency over that, the occasional rock star status any day of the week. That consistent, B- employee beats the occasional A+ employee every time.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and that's just how we're built, right? Psychologically, that's how we're built. And so what I did is, and I stumbled across this, mind you, I reflected on it, and then it was like, oh, wow, light bulb. And that is, I wanted to be a consistent leader. And I wanted to be consistent in my approach to things. And so what I did is I started writing down the things that I was trying to accomplish in managing my relationships in the firehouse. And within those systems, you have subsystems. So here's an example. Like, if I wanted to influence an adaptation, right? That's what I wanted my firefighters to be, adaptive, right? Well, because I was adaptive, right? And it's important in the fire service, or even any emergency field, that we're agile, because every shift is different, every call is different. Things come down from the head shed, and everything's blowing up now because it's just another change. You hear it over and over again. I see it over and over again in my own organization. How do you do that relationally, right? Model it relationally. And then what systems do you put in place that you can be consistent on to do those things? And so what I did is I started writing it down. And I started writing down other systems. I was saying, okay, how do I motivate the guys? Like, what am I doing to motivate them? How am I rewarding them? After a while, I came up with basically a whole system of systems. And each system had subsystems, and every subsystem had microsystems, because that's how systems work. It goes down all the way to the tiny level. And the whole point of it was I wanted to be a consistent leader. And so guess what? When I systemized how I was managing my relationships based on the actions that I need to do, all of a sudden, I was able to create influence in any station, any team that I was ever on. And so I coined it as relational systems leadership. And that is, instead of building system for output-based things for getting stuff accomplished, it was, hey, what type of systems can I build to build relational outcomes?
Yeah.
And that's how I tackled it as far as systems are concerned at the people level.
Johnny, that's man, I love that. One of the things that one of the project management concepts that I've really appreciated and kind of seen it in so many different and I guess there's so many different applications in the fire department, is the concept of velocity, where your organizational velocity or your individual velocity or your team velocity is essentially just how much work can this entity get done. And I think one of the smartest things we can ever do is invest in velocity. And, one of the things I like so much about what you're talking about is understanding that it's the team that generates that value. If you have a project team, it's the team that's going to get the work done, not the structure, not the paperwork, not the goal. It's the team itself. And so when you invest in the team, when you make the team strong, what you're doing is you're increasing that team's velocity. And it's one of those things where it's easy to say, don't worry about the team. Let's just run off and attack the low-hanging fruit. And I think that that's kind of it's like it's penny smart, pound foolish. Because you'll get those quick results, but you haven't built the foundation to see that sustained effort over time. And so one of the things I really like so much about what you're talking about is these are smart systems. These are systems designed to achieve an objective, and you understand that that only gets done with the team. So yeah, I just think that that's right on, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and that's why we're like-minded on this stuff. Is I think you can oversaturate things with systems, right? Because if you go too hard with it and it's kind of like the only thing you're talking about and that's what you're pushing is the system itself, then that's where I think you can get in trouble with systems. And so I do want to at least have a disclaimer or a caveat to all that. And that is the goal isn't the system itself. And that's where leaders can kind of get lost in. And as you put, it's the teamwork part of it. And all you're doing is building consistency. So that way, the relationships are strong, the consistency is there, and the team can now thrive. Versus the goal is for the system to work well.
Yeah, exactly correct. That's exactly right.
It's not a good mindset or outlook to accomplish.
Yeah.
You take the human side out of it, right? Now you truly are becoming a manager.
So let me ask you kind of an open-ended question here. How do you build a team? So you've talked in a couple different settings about this now. We've talked about the sort of the team at the firehouse, the command team, the management team, whatever team we're talking about, and just go wherever you want with this. How do you build a team?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think it's even understanding what that looks like in order to get there. Because most people already think they're on teams and they've never even really experienced one. And so unless someone understands what the endpoint actually is, and I use that term loosely, endpoint, there's not really an endpoint. You're always working on the team. But this is what I can say is once you experience it, it's almost like a drug. And in a sense it is, because when you're on a team, the amount of oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, endorphins that are released on every shift that you come to work, you are on a high, essentially, a natural high, where it's a feeling that you want to capture and never wanted to leave. On every team I've built, especially like once you become a team, it literally is talked about every single day within the team. Like, oh man, these guys are awesome. My job is awesome. This team is awesome. It's literally like people won't stop talking about it. So if you don't already have that happening right now, I promise you're not on a team, because that's what happens when all those hormones are released, is you never want it to go away.
And people that have been on a high functioning team will understand what you're talking about there. When you're excited to go hang out with the guys, you're excited to go to work, the tones go off and you're like, yeah, we're ready. Let's go. If you've been on that team, you understand exactly what you just said there.
When you said when the tones go off and you're ready to work, literally the hair raised up on my arms.
Yep.
Because I put myself in that moment.
Yep.
And that's the impact of it. Like it literally took me back to that place. It's like, gosh, man, it just gets me pumped up, man. And so, so on a team, you'll hear, the regurgitation of, oh, there's trust. That's such like a small part of being, I mean, it's a major part. You need trust to have a team, right? But it's just one aspect of building a team is trust. And then some people will say like, oh, shared vision. Yeah, absolutely. We all need to be going in the same direction. But that's also not all of it. Uh, McChrystal, he wrote the book Team of Teams, and he talked about something that I really liked, and he said shared consciousness, and I think uh, that's a major aspect of it, and that is, hey, it's shared consciousness kind of incorporates all of those things, right? Like, hey, we trust each other, we're loyal to each other, we know what that person's next move is because we have such a deep relationship with them. Um, we're all headed into the same direction. That shared consciousness, I think, wraps a lot of it up there. But here's, I think, the key aspect of it is: do you truly enjoy, and love working with the group of people that you're with? I think if you have the shared consciousness, which incorporates all the stuff we just talked about, and you truly enjoy the people you're with, now you're on the team.
Hmm.
I would say just to make it as easy as possible, because if you go into the whole like kind of like academic kind of path on all of this stuff, um, it's too easy to justify being on a team that you're not actually on.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, I can have trust and shared vision, but meaning I can agree that we all need to be great firefighters and professionals, and I can agree and I can trust that you're going to pull me out of the building because you're a badass professional. That doesn't mean you're still on a team. You see what I'm saying? So you can
Yeah,
have
for
shared
sure.
vision and trust,
Yep.
but if I don't enjoy working with the people that I'm with, that's not a team. That's not a team at the end of the day. You've heard
So,
the saying, I trust you with my life, but I don't trust you with my wife.
hmm,
Like, there's layers of trust, is what
yeah, for
that's.
sure. Yep. Well, let me ask you one more question about this team dynamic, and then I want to switch to talking about your book. So, what advice would you give to maybe let's just talk about a company officer right now. What advice would you give to a company officer who has some problems with their team, whatever that might be? They've got a dysfunctional team. Where would you start?
Yeah, you always start with yourself.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, I mean, there's so many reasons why you have a dysfunctional team. Um, uh, Sometimes it's um, things that you're doing wrong. Other times it's you are swimming in different directions than the person that actually has the most influence within your work. And I'll call it a work group, because if you have dysfunction, you don't have a team.
Hmm.
We just use the term, just so we all understand what we're talking about. But it's not truly a team; it's a work group. So I'm in that work group. Typically, what I see is when it's dysfunctional is there's an informal leader, or even if it's a higher level team where they're actually a leader, but it's informal in the sense that they report to you. So they're still like in an informal position because of rank and organizational structure within that team. Uh, Meaning they're not the leader of that actual team, but they're a leader of another team, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yep.
So if they're swimming in a different direction than you and they have the influence, there's going to be dysfunction. And that's probably the one I see the most. And so that's why I'm a huge proponent of you. If you're leading alone, you're managing. Leadership is people say it's a lonely endeavor. If you're doing it alone, you're not actually leading, because there's always an informal leader. There's never just a formal leader in any actual team or group. There's someone who has as much influence as you or more and is on the same team as you.
Yep.
And so, uh, if you're not working with that individual, if meaning you haven't teamed up with that person, you're uh, you're losing leverage. You're losing influence. You're losing the team every single day, every
Hmm.
day.
Yeah, very well said. I really appreciate the distinction between management and leadership here, and it kind of reminds me. I remember hearing a long time ago, firefighters don't want managers, they want leaders. And I think we've taken that way too far. And I think what we think about as leadership really is management. And I think that's something that you said to me the other day. And there's moments where you need to, and when I talk about leadership here, I'm mainly talking about courage. I think a huge element of leadership is courage, and there's going to be times, and not like physical courage, like you go into a fire, but like the courage to do the unpopular thing. it's 2 a.m. You've had a busy day. You just got back from a fire. You need to decon your gear. You need to wash the saw. You need to wash your gear. But it's 2 a.m. and you take the easy road. There's times for leadership where you need to step up and say, "Hey guys, like this is the right thing to do. We're going to do it." But a lot of times, being a good company officer, especially, is a management function. Like, can you help the people progress through their career? Will you get their check sheets done? Will you help them get ready for driver pump operator school? And so these are management functions. And so, I think we sometimes conflate being a company officer with having, this, you have to give like a field general speech to your guys every day and, charge up the hill in the battlefield. And that's not real life. It's largely a management function.
It, preach, brother, because I think that's what I get frustrated the most, is the bad information out there and how widely accepted it is now that it's almost like, for me, it's like swimming upstream now, because
Yeah.
it's taken such a hold of not just the fire service, but just organizations as a whole. Um, in fact, you'll even hear people say like, "Well, in order to be a good leader, you need to be a good manager." Even in that same within itself, there's conflation, and that is no. In order to be a good leader, you need to be good at relationships, which is emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
social intelligence, cultural intelligence, all the things. You need to know your job, technical intelligence, right? Like all of that stuff. Managing, to be a good manager, you need to be a good manager. There's um, so when people say like, "Hey, in order to be a good leader and be a good manager," what they're really saying is to be good at your job at the organizational rank that you're at, you need to have management skills. That's the correct way to say that. And so the further you go up in an organization, the more management skills you need and the less leadership skills you need. And so what I say is where you need the most leadership is at the firefighter level. You know why? Because you have no rank.
Yep.
And so if you're going to influence people, it is purely relational based. It's the most purest form of leadership that you can possibly get is at the firefighter level when you are the informal leader. And so it truly starts at the lowest rank. That's when you need the most leadership.
100%.
And then as you move up in rank, the less leadership you need and the more management skills, the more administrative skills. Now, it's not to throw once again, this is where like people get all upset at me, like, "Oh no, you need to be a good leader." Like, no, yeah, absolutely. Because all of that distinctive influence that we talked about, that leadership influence at the executive level still needs to be there. And guess what? You still need to build a command team, right? But that building that command team and the amount of time that you put into that versus all of the other tasks that you're doing throughout the day that you can fail on. And then you know what people call you when you fail on those tasks? A bad leader. Even though it had nothing to do with leadership skills, it had to do with your ability to supervise, it had your ability to manage system, build system, fix problems. Those aren't that's not leadership skills. Those are management administrative skills that you're lacking on. And those are the
Yeah.
skills that we don't really at younger and you said this the other day and it was just spot on, Peter. When you're talking about project management, is these skills we're not focused on. We're focusing on, hey, we got to vent roofs, like how are we
Yep.
dragging people out of buildings, like how are we catching hydrants, like how are we setting up 3-to-1 mechanical advantage systems, like those are the skills that you work on all the way up until all of a sudden you're just thrown into a battalion chief role.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, honestly, you're exact. I don't have anything to add to that. I think that you said it perfectly. Well, Johnny, let's switch gears here a little bit because I want to talk about the book. I want to talk about the book you wrote, and the reason I think it's so interesting is you have so many different things that you've done, whether it's your military experience, your time in the fire department, your time consulting and working with other leaders and talking to other fire service chiefs and executive leaders and all that. And I just wonder what made you want to kind of condense all that into a book and to take all these experiences and consolidate them. Well, what was the driver behind that?
Yeah, I think it's honestly like anything else is when you feel like let's use your experience, like you stood up one of the first, if not the first, project management divisions as an actual role for your fire department in Henrico County, correct,
Yeah,
sir?
Henrico.
Um, it's when you see a gap in something and you have the answer for it, or at least in your mind you have the answer for it, you can't help but to want to spread that information. So what did that do? When you saw it work and you saw how impactful it is, you made a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's what I did is I saw like, hey, this was a repeatable process for me. You can put me in Google, you can put me in Apple right now, and within 2 years, I will have whoever they give me, they will be a team. They will
Mm-hmm.
love working with each other. They will have job satisfaction. They will have a passion for, um, you know, whatever department we're working in. Um, and the reason being is I've found the secret sauce to it. Not because I'm some genius or whatever, by any stretch of the imagination, but I have found the answers
Hmm.
because there are. It's a skill at the end of the day. I've developed this skill, and so yeah, when you do that, you're like, okay, well, how am I going to get the word out? And I just chose writing because I'm not even a good writer, but I'm just a better writer than I am a speaker.
Yeah.
So yeah, I chose doing the book.
So, what can people expect if they get your book and they read through it? What kinds of things can people expect to get out of it?
So here's my disclaimer. It is my first book I ever wrote. I read through it again. I'm like, oh man, I should have said this or should have wrote
Yeah.
this. It's like, okay. I just chalk it up as I'm not a writer, and I'm a firefighter who wrote a book. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
a writer who's also a firefighter, which is there's a clear distinction there. And so, but what they can expect is not a regurgitation of what you see in all the other leadership books. I use a crawl, walk, run kind of philosophy in it, and that is we go over just kind of my view on leadership, some of the stuff that we talked about today, just to get us on the same bus. Because we can't even get into the team development stuff if we can't even meet eye to eye on what leadership actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that, I go over some things that I think are important that are just misnomers. Like, for example, one of the chapters is on empowerment. And we throw out empowerment like it's the fix all to like leadership and, oh, we just need to empower people. Well, what I've learned is people don't want to actually be empowered. They just want to feel empowered. And that
Hmm.
is two different things.
How
Because
interesting.
if you take any type of leadership role, there's only a select few that will take advantage of empowerment, and it's 10%. Have you ever heard of the Price Square Root Law?
Mm-mm.
So the Price Square Root Law basically says that um, the square root of the number of the organization will always do 50% of the work. So
Yep.
let me break down the math because I'm not a mathematician myself, but if there's 100 people in your organization, the square root of 100 is 10.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 people in that organization are going to do 50% of the work.
Yep. This is totally correct.
So they call that and it's called a law because it's repeatable. You can go to any organization. It's not the square root theory; it's Price's square root law. And so with that being said, that's why we run into all these issues with ownership in organizations. Is 10 people out of 100, and let's say you don't know where that 10 is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
If 5 of that is on your management team out of the 100 people, that leaves 5 worker bees actually doing this stuff. And
Yep.
you see that in organizations now, where all the people that were doing this stuff, well, guess what? They get promoted. And so you just took, for this example, half of the people that were doing all the work and left the other half there to pick up the slack of the work you just left.
Yeah.
Or
Doers are the commodity. Doers are the commodity
yes,
in any organization.
yes, and that is why I preach the teams thing, because you're not going to get ownership unless it is something that is existential beyond the work, because no one wants to do work for the sake of doing work.
Hmm.
Not a single person on this planet wants to do work for the sake of doing work. They want to do work because it's a means to something. And uh, in an effort to get people to go above and beyond, meaning the means of something more than a paycheck, it's got to be something that is beyond them. And the only way that I have seen that is effective in the fire service is through teams. And that is, hey, guys will do it for each other.
Hmm.
Guys will do it because there's an identity. So here's another example of, you'll know you're on a team if that team has an identity. There's no such thing as having a team without an identity. I mean, there's something that they look at their group of individuals that separates them from every single person else or every other group of people out there. That is how we function as a society. That's why, like, you put people in a room, guess what happens? Eventually, all the people that like reading books, they're in one little group. And then the people that love sports, they're in another group. You see it in high schools, right? Like,
it's human nature.
Lunch, that we are pack animals at the end of the day. And I don't mean we're animals; we're way above animals, but we have a pack mentality, right? And so that's why teams are important, is because, and why, or I should say, having identity is important if you're going to build a team, because you're building a pack, and you have to have something that is coalescing, that makes them different.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't just be you're a firefighter. It can't be the badge that you're wearing because everyone else in the department's wearing that badge.
Yep.
It has to be at something specific to that crew.
Yeah, I mean, Maslow talks about this. You know, the need for identity is a critical human need. And people will find that identity sometimes with their job, sometimes with the team they're on. You know, people that are at busy stations, that becomes part of their identity. Oh, I'm a firefighter, but I'm also a busy station firefighter, or I'm a truck firefighter, or whatever. You know, these are the things that build that identity. That's so important for, you know, all kinds of things, all kinds of motivations, and, you know, team dynamics and interpersonal dynamics and all that sort of stuff.
It's ironic that you said that. I literally just finished that chapter yesterday on my new book.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I'm actually, I started, I wrote a note for myself. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just got excited. I do want to talk about the new book.
It's a subchapter on a chapter that I'm calling mental sovereignty. And in an effort to have mental sovereignty, you need to have an identity. And what I would say about that is people will typically pick identities that can be taken from you. And that's a problem, because anything that can be taken from you is not a good identity. So, for example, if people pick an identity as a firefighter, that is a poor identity. And the reason why is because firefighters get hurt on the job all the time.
Yep.
Firefighters change careers. And guess what gets taken with you? That identity. And you just talked about the importance of how instrumental having an identity is to the human psyche.
It's
and
foundational.
So if your identity is taken from you, what moves you, what drives you, who you are as a person is now taken away from you, and you have no idea where to go and what you're doing next, and creates huge mental health issues. And so for myself, and you can pick a few different things, stuff that will not be taken away from you. But I'm a faith-driven man. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I'll shout it from the rooftops. If people don't like it, I don't care. It's my identity, and that is something that can never ever be taken away from me. My faith. It doesn't. You can put me in prison. You can take my career. You can take You could take everything from me, and you know what you cannot take from me? My faith. It's impossible. So that's what I put my identity in.
I love that.
That has to be for everybody.
Can I just say real quick, Johnny? I absolutely love that. That's the quote of the show right there. I mean, you're 100% right about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And so, so when it comes to identity and the importance that you stressed on it, I couldn't agree more. But there is a distinction. We can't just pick any identity, and that's the only the caveat I wanted to make to what we're choosing as our identity.
Man, Very, very well said. Very well said, and thank you for saying it. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about today is, as promised, the new book that you have coming out. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's called Forging You. Is that correct? Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm sticking with the team forging. The you know the I said team the theme.
Hmm.
Um, it's partly branding, but also the same heating, shaping, cooling, polishing. The same way the philosophy that I use for building teams. The same way that you shape the leader within, and so
Hmm.
that's the subtitle of the book. It's forging you, shaping the leader within, and that's the sections is that, and then with each section, right? We go over mental sovereignty is one of the chapters. Expect self rescue. So
Love that.
it's really one of those like things of like, hey, no one's going to save you but yourself, brother. Like especially in this career field, I think a lot of people like just have this victim mentality, and they're waiting for someone to do something to help them. Like, oh, this didn't get accomplished because of this reason or that all these external reasons. Um, and so just a chapter on how to uh, get out of that mindset, and here's the tools that you can do it, because it's one thing to say what you need to do, and what I think we're missing in a lot of classes, leadership books, conferences, it's the how.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, exactly right. That is the how. It's very easy to diagnose problems. Getting into the prescription, that's where the value is. Talking about the actual how do you do it. That's actually one of the things that I've really appreciated about all the work you've done is I think that you do spend some time talking about the diagnosis, like, hey, here's the issue I see. But I really like it because it's not all theoretical and it's not all tactical. It's a hybrid where you do talk about, hey, look, this is what I think the problem is, and I'll be candid about it. But here are some practical steps that we can take to address that. And that's actually one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to this book. One, because I really like the concept of it, which is that, to forge that team, you have to first forge yourself, which I think that's entirely right. But also because it does have that really, I think, really well structured balance of tactical and theoretical.
yeah, no, I appreciate
Yeah, I
that.
think you've done that's something I think you've done a fantastic job at.
Yeah, thank you. I think my issue is it's communication, right? Like, not the best writer, I'm not the best speaker, so it's hard to like articulate some of this stuff. And then the other problem with it is it's getting people to reframe how they think about things, because a lot of you get into the book, or I'm speaking at a conference or whatever, people come with stuff that's already doctrine in their mind.
Yep.
And I am saying the opposite of this stuff. And so now I'm saying the opposite of what people already believe. And Mark Twain once said, it's easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled. And that's where I'm at
Man, that's deep right
um,
there.
is trying to convince people they've been fooled. And so it's a tall order, and so that gets me mixed reviews, But I'm out here just I appreciate the support, because it's tough sledding out here trying to convince people they've been fooled.
Well, as soon as you get that next book out, man, we'll have you back on to talk about it. I'm really looking forward to that. But my last question for you, Johnny, is if people like the stuff that we've been talking about today and they want to learn more about whether it's the systems that you've developed, the system of systems, how you build a team, your experiences, the things that you're talking about and thinking about, where can people go to get more, to learn more about this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so thank you for that opportunity. It's I have a website, and it's www.forgingteams.com. Super
And
easy to get to.
we'll link that in the show notes as well.
Oh, perfect,
Yep.
Peter. And then in there, there's free resources. So it has free material and free resources. All the resources are all the articles I've written. I think most of the podcasts I've been on are pretty close to it. And then there's free material. So I give out material that that's completely free. So there are QR codes in there of like, hey, the relational systems leadership, you know, um, plan or program in there free. The forging model in there, free. All the steps to do that stuff. The relational systems leadership model, like all of it's in there. The sphere of influence, basically all of the practices and theories and stuff like that, free. And then on top of that, if you want to bring me out to your department or do a seminar, if you want coaching, anything like that, I list all my services in there and contact information. And, I'm here to help.
And one more time, what's that website?
It's www.forgingteams.com.
Awesome. And yeah, like I said, that'll be in the show notes. Dr. Johnny Torgeson, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Peter. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, my friend.